You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi. My name is Siti Azzah Binti Syed Sultan, but I go by Azzah Sultan. I'm a Malaysian Muslim mixed media artist, and I'm currently in Washington State.
Awesome. So we like to start interviews with Are you hood grown? And if so, how does that influence your aesthetic?
Well, for me, in terms of where I am from, so I'm from Malaysia. I'm originally from Malaysia, but I grew up moving around a lot. So I moved around, and I was born actually in Abu Dhabi, and I've lived in Bahrain, Saudi, Finland, and Dublin for a bit. I went
Everywhere.
all over the continent. And then I moved to New York in 2013 to start my undergraduate, where I went to Parsons with you.
Yep.
Um, I feel like in terms of how that's influenced my work, I definitely have a very global set of ideas and views in terms of how I see identity and how I grasp that role of identity within my work. So I try to see things from an outside lens. At the same time, I think with that experience of moving around a lot, I try to incorporate a lot of mixed medium within my work because I feel like it just makes it a little bit more complex. At the same time, it just really sticks true to who I am and what I've been through.
Dope. So from all of the work I've seen from you, I've known you for, how long has it been now? Geez, like 7 years since we've started Parsons. That's a while. Oh, I feel old now. But you have always had a close connection to your own heritage, as well as like it's been a celebration of your heritage through your work, but more so through a modern lens. What narrative are you trying to create around Islamic art, and do you see your work as political or more of like celebratorial, just more like a celebration of Islam?
Yeah. Well, I think being an artist and being an artist of color, your work is always going to be seen political no matter what you do.
Right.
There's no denying that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, honestly. It depends on the context, though, on how it's being highlighted. I think for me, in terms of how my work has grown, when I first started in the US, a lot of my art was developed on the idea of Islamophobia and the concept of the duality of identity and nationality at the same time. What does it mean to practice a faith within a context where there's a lot of animosity against it? I think my work has very evolved from that because I don't necessarily focus so much on my faith within my work. It definitely is still there because I wear a hijab, but my work has grown more in terms of thinking about my identity through my my heritage and a cultural context. I don't think there's anything wrong at the same time in terms of reintroducing my faith within my work, because I do wear a headscarf and I do go more towards performance right now. So that's always a part of me that I can't really dismiss, and I don't want to. It is who I am. It's not something that I'm trying to hide within my work. But I think that there is more nuances within my work. I am not just a Muslim artist.
Right.
So many other facets towards myself. The scarf on my head, I don't want that to be just the main topic.
Yeah. To kind of talk about your video work, and I'm going to try to go in chronological order so this makes sense, like the work that I remember from we were in school and then what you're currently working on. So I apologize if this is more about your work that is a lot about your Muslim identity, but then we'll get to your other stuff in a second. And I think that's cool that you have had that evolution. I think that we all have as women of color in our class. We are very much focused on our identities and then how that can slightly ripple out. Interesting. But I was always a big fan of your video work, especially like your really small clips that just were able to capture so much with very little words. Like the piece you had, Islam teaches peace, where you have Barack Obama and President George Bush. I don't know why I didn't use the title on Mr. President Barack Obama and try to use it on Bush. That was terrible. Slip up on me. But you also have the piece Radical Media, where there's these a bunch of talking heads in like pretty much all Fox News, where they're saying like radical Muslim and all this crazy radical Islam and all this crazy rhetoric. These are two very contrastive pieces, but they're such short video clips. So when you're working like that, how do you collect this kind of video material? Do you have this idea? Do you see these video clips on your own and then go, oh, I know how I'm going to use it? Or do you collect, and then figure out how to make art from it after?
Yeah, I think for those two pieces, it was mostly around the idea of, well, the time that I made them was around 2016, before Trump got elected. I think it was definitely a very strange time for a lot of us. But you know, being an immigrant and coming from the outside, it was very interesting for me to like navigate that situation, because I had no control as to what the future would be like. In terms of like not being able to vote and stuff like that, you know? And I think the main source of where everyone was getting their information was through news media. And for me, being the millennial that I am, a lot of the news that I get from is actually through Twitter. I know that's very bad to say, but I follow a lot of content of people where I do trust their views and how the media is being portrayed. I was realizing a lot of the times when you go to CNN, even BBC, especially Fox News, those kind of medias, it was a lot of very derogatory ways of viewing Muslims. Also the idea of like what a Muslim was, as if it's something that we can focus on in just one sentence. And it's not, you know what I mean? It's not just one identity. There's so many different facets towards it. I think from there, I was just inspired just the way people talked and how they described Islam. So from there, I just started mainly just like looking up a lot of like YouTube content of how Islam was being talked about in the news, and I would just find all these clips online, even like record them, re-record them, you know, grab those files using like converters and stuff like that, and taking them from off the internet and then actually re-editing them and having like this archive. I remember my laptop was like full of just archives of just like video clips of people saying these certain terms. And then from there, the first piece, Radical Media, that's where I started to like, it was a long process where I would find each individual word, and then I would basically stitch it into like one collage of everyone saying that same word. So like radical Islam, jihad, Sharia law, which is really funny because Sharia already means law. So you're saying law again. And then from that piece, I started to dissect those terms a little bit more, but then thinking about political figures and how they've portrayed Islam through the media. And then I did that one piece where I had Western sort of politicians and figures like, you know, from America, the US, the UK, France, and stuff like that. And then I moved on from there towards that video of Bush saying Islam is peace, and then Obama saying Islam means peace. And then that's where it starts to get stitched a little bit more, where it's like this perception of trying to show where you understand something and you support something, but your actions and how you've sort of come across with your agreements and your laws outside of the US onto different countries is saying a different thing.
Right. Well, that's beautifully said. I feel like the question I gave was not great, but you answered it. All right, so you created this piece, I believe, last year. I really, really love this piece, perfectly blush counter that you created. It's kind of like an installation piece, but it also is like an individual piece. So it's a piece about colorism. It examines colorism, especially within Southeast Asian communities. And it's a kind of a recreation of like a bleaching cream product. How did you feel while you were like posing for these like promotional photos you put with the piece? And like what were you like thinking about as you were like putting yourself in that position?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about like the origin of how
Yeah.
that piece started as well. So being brown, growing up, I feel like a lot of women of color can relate to this in terms of how colorism is seen within our culture and our society.
Hmm.
This like bleaching your skin, becoming lighter. You would be seen as more beautiful and also more accepted in terms of marriage proposals, and you can find the job that you love and all these things. Definitely that was something that was never enforced within my own family. My parents have been very support like progressive in terms of like loving your skin and stuff like that, but society in a way made me feel like I need to be lighter, and
Hmm.
it's that concept that really builds upon in your head, and it's not something that just goes away. It's really fully ingrained in our culture. A product that's very popular, Fair and Lovely, which is huge in Southeast Asia. It's a skin bleaching ingredient. And so what I did was I was back in New York during winter break, and I just went through a couple of stores, a lot of Desi owned stores, and I just started to buy a bunch of bleaching products. And I bought like 5 or 6 of them just so I could do initial research. It was very weird because I bought so many and I went out to the counter. The lady kind of just looked at me in a way. It was like, I don't know if she was like supportive of this, or it was like, this is weird. Why are you buying so many? You know what I mean? And then from there, I looked through all the ingredients. And what I did was I actually picked out all the harmful bleaching agents, chemicals, dyes, and acids from each product, and I made those as the main ingredients for this new product that I made out. Um,
Mm.
so the initial intention for this piece was to actually show myself lighter for the piece. But then I just felt like that seemed very redundant, and it felt like I was just doing the same thing these products were doing. Um,
Hmm.
and so I was like, why not I use humor in my work and make something look a little bit weirder? And
Hmm.
something that I've noticed in a lot of these bleaching ads is like for a pinky clear glow. Like there's this intention of femininity through the color pink. And so I decided I'm just gonna turn myself pink. And also I wanted to be very sensitive with this topic because it is something that women still do.
Right.
Uh, Women back home still do it. I know plenty of people who actually think skin bleaching is not a problem. And so
Hmm.
I don't want to make something that targets these women. You know what I mean? I don't want to make something that makes these women feel like they're being made fun of. I was targeting more towards the marketing of these ingredients and these creams. This piece is more about like a big fu towards those companies,
Hmm.
towards the women who have been lured into using these products. So that's like the initial start of it. And it was definitely really weird because whenever I film my work, it's all a one person show.
Right.
I deal with the lighting, I deal with the filming, the editing, and all that. And so having to do that in a studio, putting pink paint on myself, face paint, was very weird. But it was, I was lucky enough to do it in a studio space where no one else could see me.
Hmm.
But from going to my photo studio to my actual studio, that like time in between, I'm like, I don't want anyone to see me right now because it's very strange.
You're in an art space. Like no one's gonna judge you. It's
Well,
different.
judge you, of course, but there's still a part of you that's like, this is. It was definitely a big step for me because I had never done performance like that before. Uh,
Hmm.
Before that, I've only done performance once, and so this was the second time I was doing performance again. So I think putting myself within that context was definitely really weird. But then I'm like, I don't want to use someone else as a model. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is personal to me. At the same time, I'm able to give out these emotions, and other people can sort of latch onto those emotions and make it personal to themselves. Even though I was focusing more in terms of the colorism within the Southeast Asian community, I still gave context into communities of other color within my work. The video piece has a bunch of ads from like different companies that target different women. companies that are used by Black women, by
Mhm.
Southeast Asian women, so on and so forth.
Amazing. Your work always has so many layers, and it's just always just like also aesthetically pleasing. So beautiful. Can we talk about your use of materials a bit, just on a broader scale with all of your work? You've pretty much worked with like every medium, from like fabric to food to video to paint, the normal things. You capture everything. How do you choose the material once you have a concept, or has a material ever inspired a concept for you?
It really, I think for me, it really depends because I'm really focused on using the right materials for the right concept. And sometimes certain concepts can't stick to just one material. Um,
Mm-hmm.
especially so for example, that piece that I did for my first year show for my MFA, it was a very personal project, and it was a very complex topic because it's like, how do you talk about the bleaching of one skin in just one material? And so I felt the need to incorporate different types of things. Like I made boxes, I made an installation, I did a painting, I did 2 different performance videos. It really depends. Sometimes I will have a topic and then I will stick to one product and one material, but then I might investigate another material and feel like, oh my God, wait, I want to incorporate this within the work as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to stick to one thing because I feel like identity itself, it's very complex. I can't necessarily stick to one specific material for that. It depends on the flow of it as well. I think when it comes to video, I feel like I have the most freedom when I'm working with video because I'm able to manipulate it in any way that I want. And I'm able to like digitally alter things within it as well. Like I can take traditional materials and put that into my video, you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And put that within my performance as well.
Dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, your work always touches everything. So I had to ask about materials. We talked about this a little bit in your last answer, but you describe yourself as a performer, as the performer, the author, and the subject. How do you feel your work shifts when you are the subject of your work?
Um, yeah, I feel like before I used to focus a lot with like community and having people engage within my work, and they were very much a part of my work. Um, I think coming here to WSU, Washington Pullman, I can't find my community here. You know what
Mm.
I feel it's a very isolating space, and so I had to see myself as all 3 people in terms of like the author, the subject, and the maker. I think for me, seeing myself as the subject definitely makes everything a bit more emotional within my work. But at the same time, I try to sort of put myself in a position where it isn't all just completely my emotions that are being shown. It's like this facade, almost like a character that's very formal and presentable. That way, others can see themselves maybe within my work as well.
Interesting. I like that answer. It's like everything is always just like wrapped up in a tight bow with your answers. I like.
Yeah.
So, well, next week you're graduating, so congrats to you on completing your MFA. This is very exciting. Kudos to you, my friend. But unfortunately, with our current situation, obviously your thesis show has been impacted greatly by this. So how has the quarantine impacted your thesis, along with, but also how has it pushed you as an artist and a creative thinker to think about how you're going to present this to folks?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting time for artists. And well, before I dive into that topic a little bit more, what I've noticed is a lot of artists of color have taken advantage of this time. I
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the internet and creating a community online is something that a lot of minorities have a very strong grasp on because you can't necessarily have that community in real life.
Right.
So I
Mhm.
do this like a lot of just, workshops, community building, engagement of art through like online presence. So I think that we've managed to like create this space of positivity. Also, I feel like as artists of color, we have a lot of problems that we're dealing with ourselves in real life, that we have to manage. We don't necessarily have the privilege to look at this quarantine as a way to affect our art, and we have to take it in a more positive sense. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mhm.
I think for me, definitely I was very devastated when my thesis show was canceled, because this work was about my family, more specifically my mother, and she really wanted to see the work in real life,
Mhm.
so having the show canceled, I was very upset because we were supposed to have our work installed in the museum and everything, and so that was taken away from us. And then I found out I had less than 24 hours to set up my art and to document before the building shut down. And
Oh my God.
so I literally had a breakdown, maybe cried for like an hour, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I need to go to school. Went to school,
Mhm.
took all of my art in my studio, went into one of the gallery spaces in our department, set it all up, spent like probably 6 hours at school, setting it all up, documenting everything, taking videos of everything, and then had to pack it all up and bring it back to my apartment. So I think I've just hit, living in New York, you definitely hit rock bottom
Oh yeah.
so many times.
Oh yeah. It's like I'm like such more of an adult than so many people my age because I lived in New York.
And then also like the status that I'm in the US as well, you hit.
Mhm.
So I felt like in that moment, I felt like, oh, everything sucks, but you know what? I have to make it work. And I managed to document everything, and I definitely tried to make this more positive. So I did an online show through Instagram Live, and
Mhm.
by the end of that live, there were 400 people that viewed my work, which is probably more than people would have viewed my work in real life, anyways.
Right. That is true.
Yeah, so I think I'm seeing this as very positive, and it managed to get quite a bit of attention. My
Mhm.
work has been featured in Hyperallergic, and I'm like reaching out to like different gallery spaces, seeing how I can show this work in the future. I definitely don't think that it's not going to be shown in a gallery. I'm trying to make sure that, this is something that I can show in the future after, inshallah, after this whole thing is over.
Awesome. Yeah, I let us know. Like we'll go or try to wherever it is. I'm gonna try to get there. Um, I know you just left it on a positive note, and I'm asking a kind of not so positive question, but just to dive in a little bit more into your thesis show, what element of your thesis do you feel like we can't really possibly experience through virtual reality? We need to be there in person. What about your show that you need to describe to us that could help?
Definitely three of the installations within my work. So two of the installations heavily evolve materiality and fiber that's being stitched onto fabric and onto
Mm.
canvas. But the one work that I feel like you can't, because those works, you can see the details of it through photographs, and like you can understand the folds and everything. So that's totally fine. But I had a piece that was greatly affected. So this piece called Munghido, where it was, I made spice sachets.
So
So I,
smell.
smell. I went back home during the break, and I brought back so much spices, like, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves, star anise, turmeric. I don't know what it is in English. It's called jinta manis. I think it's fenugreek seeds, mustard seeds, all
Mm.
spices, right? And what I did was I picked out specific Malaysian dishes that my mom cooked, and I took out all the key spice ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
hand pounded them in a mortar and pestle, and then each set of spices, I put them into cheesecloth. And so the intention behind that was, as you were viewing my installation and my thesis show, as a viewer, you were able to get a spice sachet and smell it as you were making your work. Of course, you can't really view that.
Mm-hmm.
experience it as a whole. So I think what I've managed to make up for that was I created a video of my mother talking about food and smell and spice. And so that piece would accompany the spice piece. So if you look on my website, there's a link towards it where you can view that video of just my mother talking about food. And so I think that, in a way, since you can't smell it, it gives you some sort of visual elements with it as well.
Amazing. Well, that all sounds very beautiful. I'll definitely look into that. I like search through all your website, but I'll get to that for sure. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and us figuring out time zones and all that. It's so good to see your face after a few years. Can you lastly tell the folks where they can find your work so they can view all your beautiful work?
Yes, of course. You can view my work on my website, azzahsultan.com. That's AZZAHSULTANSTUDIO.com. I'm like, well, it's a lot of spelling.
Yeah, you got it. I'm looking at it.
Also, follow me on Instagram, Siti Sultan, SITISULTAN.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, also, is there anything new for your work? What have you been up to other than you're graduating in a week? I feel like that should just be like, you're done for a little bit.
You think, currently, because of what's happening with Corona, I feel like I have to stay in Poland for a bit just before things get a little bit better. I'm currently working as a sort of like a program coordinator and designer for an online residency program called Raise Karma. I've been applying to a bunch of fellowships, and I have an interview coming up soon, so hopefully.
Ooh, fingers crossed.
I'm thinking about, residency programs and fellowships. I also really, really enjoyed teaching the past 2 years. And that's definitely something I want to look into more in the future.
I think you should. You'd be a great teacher. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.